The next stage in our process of designing a cartoon character is to take our basic spherical shape that we've used for our cranial mass, to add another piece onto the bottom of it. In this case, we'll use this shape here, and I'm drawing an ellipse down here on the bottom to gain an attitude for the character's head. Then I'll draw my eye line on here. Now what I'm going to do with this, actually before I take this next step here, I'm going to draw a couple of these here, just to give you a sense of what you can do with your cartoon characters. I'm going to draw one here, and I'll draw another one just over here on this side. I'm going to draw the exact same head shape on each one. And since in this section we're talking more about the features of the cartoon character's face, this will give you a good sense of what I'm talking about how you can design a lot of different characters based on one simple shape. So there's our basic shape, all pretty much the same. They all have the curve coming out here, which is an S curve, and a straight line on the back there to give a contrast so that we don't have all curves here, there, and everywhere. But we want to try and keep it, slightly interesting. What I'm going to do with this first one is I'm going to place an eye line across here. So there's my eye line going across there. Then on the next one, I'm going to place the eye line slightly lower in this position. And on the final one, I'm going to draw the eye line down here in that position. I will draw the center line on here in a 3/4 profile view, using a cross contour to describe that shape, and I'm going to keep it the same on each and every character, just to maintain a consistency in the point of view. And again, you can see how this is making the three-dimensional look of the shape that we're drawing here come to life a little bit more plainly before your eyes. Now the next step is the features. With the features on a character's face, we have the key features, which are the eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth, the brows. And by the brows, what I mean by the brows is that we have the fleshy part and the muscle part, which is this chunk that you can grab onto here and manipulate with your fingers. And then there's also the hairy part here that we can play around with. Those are two separate features, because you can have someone with a very heavy brow and very light eyebrows, the hair part, or you can have someone with very bushy brows, and that'll change the look of it. We also have the chin, and what else do we have? We have the forehead, and we have the hair and the cheeks. Those are our key elements for our features. And I like to think of this part of it as a multiple choice type of situation, where you can pick and choose any different type of eyes, ears, nose, mouth, cheekbones, positions, spread them apart, put them closer together, whichever you want to do, and it'll create a different looking character. So for this first guy here, let's take this guy and let's add a nose onto him. We'll use our center line across here to indicate where our nose is. And this guy's going to be sort of like a thug type character. So what we're going to do is we're going to give him sort of a broken nose type thing. We're going to pull his nose down here off the center line, and we'll add an extra little flap of skin on there, throw a nostril up onto that side there, and we'll give him that type of a nose. This character here, let's take and make this character with a long pointed nose that comes out like this and comes back and wraps around there. So it's a nose that sticks out like this. This guy here, let's just give him a little bulb nose. It just sort of pops out like this. Maybe sort of like a pig's nose even. And we just put two nostrils sticking straight up at us like that. Okay. Now we'll go on to the eyes, and the order that you do these in is completely up to you. I personally like to start off with the nose because it sort of defines the center position of the face and gives me an anchor point for the eyes as well. Next I move on to the eyes, because I feel the eyes are a very expressive part of the facial features, obviously. You've got the mouth and the eyes are your two key expression features. So on this one here, since we're going to make him sort of a thug type character, I'm going to give him a very heavy brow. So I'm going to push his brow out further here, like this, and I'm going to bring it across. And what I'm doing at this point is, as I'm drawing, I'm thinking three-dimensionally. I'm not thinking of just the lines on the sheet of paper. I'm thinking about the three-dimensional form that's actually being created by the character. And so I'm wrapping these elements around. I'm thinking as though I'm applying pieces of clay, and I'm actually sculpting the character three-dimensionally. That's the way you have to think when you draw. And that actually is a perfect segue into one of my primary rules of drawing, and that is think when you draw. You'll see me writing this all the time, and I'm going to repeat it several times throughout this video, is that you have to think when you draw. If you're not thinking when you're drawing, then basically you're just doodling. It's mindless doodling. And as a professional artist, you have to be in control of the way your pencil moves. So be sure to think about each and every line. Think about why is it there, what does it represent, what do I want the audience to understand from it, is it in the right place, should I move it over a little bit, should I change it, should I alter it in any way. You are in control of that, and that's the key thing about you being the artist, is that you are in complete control of what happens with your drawing. That's what separates us from normal everyday people who like to doodle. We think when we draw, and that's very important. So next I'll move on to the eyes. I'm going to make the eyes very, very heavy set underneath the brows there, and I'm just going to draw a couple of little curved lines like that. Now here you'll notice what I've done is I've presented the eye like this, and what I've done is as I've drawn that, I've thought about the distance of the eye from here to here, and I'm thinking, how wide is that eye? Now when I go to draw on this other side here, again, I'm thinking three-dimensionally. I've got to think about the fact that it's wrapping around. So on your head, as your head wraps around here, you've got to be thinking in terms of three-dimension. How does this wrap around? And when I'm turned like this, you can see more of this eye here because it's being presented to you, the viewer, in almost a straight-on plane view in perspective. However, this eye here, the plane for it is going off on an angle this way, and you see less of this eye. So the edge here, you're seeing less of it because it's turning away. So we want to do the same thing with the eye on this side here. We want to show less of it. And that's what creates our sense of dimension. Because remember what our basic rule of perspective is. The closer something is to you, the larger it is. The further away from you it is, the smaller. So that's the same principle that we're playing with here. Is that this eye is closer to us, this eye is further away, and it's wrapping around, so it's going to be smaller. So make sure that you're thinking about that as you're drawing. I'm going to give them an eye direction. Make sure that your character is focused on something, that they actually look like they're looking at something as opposed to a cross-eyed type thing, or the wall eye where the eyes are going off in either direction, sort of like The Simpsons. So unless your character is actually like that, and you want to do that on purpose, then you can do it, that's fine. But if not, then don't, because it just makes them look goofy. I'm just going to add bags underneath here, and again, I'm thinking of how that is applied to the character's head. You can see over here I've added in this little space there. It's kind of hard to see because I've shaded it in a little bit. I'll just erase that down. But there's a line right here and a line right here that has a distance apart from it. And what that represents is it represents the outer side of the eye where the skin is right here and the actual inside part of the eye. There's a strip of flesh there that sets the eye into the head and gives it that third dimension. If you take and throw the eye out to the side, then it looks like it's just pasted on. It looks very flat, so you want to try and maintain that three-dimensional look to it. So I'm going to stop with this character now. I'm going to move on to this guy here. Now what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to give him some big eyes. They're going to go up on his head here and round them out. And I'm going to use a triangular type of a shape, almost a teardrop type shape. I'm going to draw this line down like that, and then flatten it off on the bottom, and I'm attaching it right to my eye line there. So now when I go to draw the opposite eye on the other side, I'm looking at the distance from here to here, and again I'm thinking in terms of perspective about how far away that is in perspective. I'm going to draw a little bit closer on this side here to here, so it draws it in and makes it look like it's three-dimensional. And I'm drawing the eye on this side here, and I'm not going to be showing as much of that eye because it's on the opposite side of the head and it's away from us and it's in perspective. I'm just going to do it like that. Now the other thing I'm taking into consideration here is my perspective. I have a perspective line that runs through the eyes going across like this, and I have to maintain some sort of a perspective here. So again, the theory of the closer something is to you, the larger it is, the further away the smaller. So with this eye right here, it's closer to us, it's larger, not only this way, but also this way. So I'm going to draw a perspective line across through there and make it slightly shorter. If I made it any larger, it would take and pop the head around, and take and pop the eyes around this way so that they were both straight on to the viewer. And we don't want that type of thing. And this one here, I'm going to make this character as though he's looking off to the side this way. Like that. And the brows, I'm just going to wrap them up and over like this. Again, I'm thinking in terms of plasticine. I'm taking that plasticine, rolling it, and I'm just applying it to the head and wrapping it in. And it's like I'm taking my thumb and blending it in here along the side, and I'm blending it in here as well. And I'm going to apply another piece to this opposite side here, so it's like a little wiener that's right on there. And one of the little tips that I have for you at this point is to taper your line, to taper the shape as well. So the thickest point is right here at the very crest of it, and then here it starts to get thinner. The distance between here and here is shorter than here and here. The same thing over here. This distance is smaller. You don't want to make it too dramatic, but you just want to taper it a little bit, and it helps to give form and weight to your character. On the last one, what we're going to do is we're going to take his eyes and go right like that, pull them right out to the sides, and we're going to make them small. And actually, I'm going to put them, you can use the anchor point below the line just to alter the character. And you can go ahead and do that if you want to. Nothing wrong with doing that because it's your character. Anything you decide to do is perfectly up to you. And this one over here, I'm just going to pop his eye out on the side. So he's actually going to have little fish eyes that are popping out there on that point there. I'm going to give him, let's see which direction should we have. Well, let's have him sort of a cross-eyed type character. See how that looks. It might look kind of goofy. It's like he's looking at his own nose. There. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add skin onto the bottom here, just to connect it onto his head on this side here, and put a little bit of a bag on this side just to reflect the line that's underneath there and make it balanced on either side. And then I'm going to take and put another one on this side here, so it puffs his eye out, and we'll give him a little bit of a brow over here on this side. So it gives some dimension to the eye, and it makes it attach to the head a little bit better. So now you're beginning to see what we're talking about here, where we've got the three different heads. Each of them started off with the same basic shape, and all I've done is I've altered the eye line, I've changed the different types of eyes, I've changed the noses, and we have three completely different types of characters. Next we'll move on to the mouth. With this guy here, let's give him a pretty broad mouth that sticks way out here like this. He's got this big chin that sticks out. This guy here, we'll give him little pursed lips. They're just sort of coming down and puckering just a little bit like that. And then this guy here, we'll do something weird with him. We'll take this line across here. What we're going to do is you're going to use this line here as though that's his mouth right across there. And we'll just have his teeth sticking out like this. And just loop his teeth all the way around to make this wacky looking character like that. And this guy here, what we could do is we could give him a tooth that's sticking out over here just to make him look even more Neanderthalish, like that. And this character is more of a plain character. Again, you can see how the characters are starting to differentiate themselves even more. Now the next thing we want to add on are the ears. The ears are interesting with cartoon characters because basically they're the letter C backwards depending on which angle you're looking at your character from. So in this case here we can put an ear on here. The anchor point for the ear is basically across from the eye. Now there's an interesting little trick that you can do is you can take your thumb and fingers like this and shove your thumbs up your nose, I'm serious about this, and grab the top of your brows like this. And when you draw your hands across like this, watch what happens is I draw my hand across like this, maintaining the size of it. Presto! Hey, from my nose to my brow is the same height as my ear. And that helps to give you an idea of where you can place your ears. Now with cartoon characters you can make them with little tiny ears that are up here or whatever you want to do. In this case here with this character, if we were to do that, we'd have ears that were really quite long. They might come down to there and they could look kind of weird. So I like to keep the ears fairly simple so that they don't distract away from what the character looks like. And then I just put a little line in there to describe this shape here, make it rounded, and give it a little bit of an indentation that goes in there. And then we put this little skin flap, you know, that piece of skin right there that you can plug and plugs up your ear. Put that on there. It's an upside down Y, just to make things simple. And that defines the character's ear. Now, depending on how your character's ears are, usually the ears are pretty flush to the head where they're going back. So if you're looking at a person straight on, you don't really see too much of the ears. If you want to bring the ears out like that, which is kind of goofy, then on the opposing side of the head here, you might want to pull a little bit of the ear out. And in this case here, the ear would stick out something like that on that side. And again, I'm using my perspective. Where the top of the ear is here, I use my perspective, go across, and that gives me the high point of the ear on that side. And again, across this way gives me my low point. I could probably make this ear a little bit lower down here, a little bit larger, to get it in the proper perspective. But I personally don't tend to draw on the opposing ear on the opposite side, because in some cases it kind of clutters up this area here, and you don't know if that's actually the bag, the bag underneath the character's eye or what it is. So it becomes slightly distracting. So I usually avoid drawing it on there unless the character's ears are actually sticking way out like that. Now in this case here, let's take this character and throw the ears into more of an oval type shape like this. And then on this final one here, we could just go wacky with it and give him the big Spock ears, just for the sake of making him look really weird and like an alien, something like that. The next thing is the cheekbone. If you want to define the cheekbones with this guy here, we could define a little bit of a cheekbone just to make him a little bit more gruesome looking, scary looking there. This character I don't really think really needs it, and this guy here obviously doesn't need it because there's not much cheek area there and it's not necessary to define it. And then the next stage is to put in the actual eyebrows themselves. With this guy here, we can give him very Neanderthalish, bushy eyebrows that are like this, that help to make him look even meaner. Just pencil those in like this. With this character here, we can keep them fairly thin and long like that. Draw them in this way. In which case, in this character, because the lines are very fine, what you may want to do is, unless the character is doing something like this where the eyes are popping way up in the air there and creating a wrinkle up there, you may want to eliminate that top line off your drawing, because otherwise it becomes a little bit too convoluted, and you may just want your eyebrow, the actual hairline that you see there, to define the pressure point on that brow. This guy here really doesn't need eyebrows, unless you want to put in something goofy, like you could put in floating eyebrows here, like this, that just sort of float above. Eyebrows are good because they help to add expression to the character. Like in this case here, we just put them like this, but if I wanted to alter the character's expression to make him look like he's sort of inquiring or quizzical or something, with one eyebrow up like this, what I could do is I could do this. And it suddenly alters the expression of the character. So be careful of how you draw those things on and what it is that you want to express with your character's drawing. Let's add hair onto the character as the next final stage here. What we can do with this guy is we can take our center line here and give him a center strip that sort of comes up and over and flips down and around like this, and then peel it around his head like this and give him a little bit of a sideburn there. Give it a little bit of volume on the back side there. You can see where I've gone beyond my sphere for the cranial mass. Just add some dimension to it, and then I'll swing that line around there so it disappears in behind the brow on the opposite side, and then just do a very light shading job just to give him some dark hair here to differentiate his actual hair. With this character here, let's keep the hair design fairly simple and just give him a part on the side of the head here. I mean, we could actually take this character and turn it into a female if we wanted to. It's almost got that effeminate look to it. So let's just puff up the hair a little bit. Let's bring it around like this and put some earrings on. You can see how already it's starting to look like a female. Bring the hair down this way. Flip of the hair there. And then we can just add the lipstick on. Just to finally sell it. And then also we need eyelashes on here. Like that. And we've got our female character. This guy here, he could just use a little toupee on his head. That's something very, very simple. A tuft of hair up there. Like that. And then the final stage would be to add the neck. This guy's basically got no neck. This character here, that could be the character's neck coming right down to there with maybe a pearl necklace on or something like that. Just draw that in like that to define the character's neck, and then if the character had a dress on, we could bring the neckline down a little bit lower there, and then into the chest area and the rest of the body. With this guy here, let's do something really weird, and let's just draw his neck down like this. So that just becomes really bizarrely strange. So there is our final stage of doing our different characters. We have 3 distinctly different characters, all based on the same head shape. So you can see how just by changing the features, the size, the position of the features, the proportions of things, really makes a huge difference in the way your character can look. And I've written down some mathematical figures there in your handout to say that if we only had 5 features and there were only 10 different options for each one, which there are far more than that, but let's say there were only 10, then you'd have 5 to the power of 10, which puts you well into the millions of different types of characters. Each one would be subtly different, because on this character here, to make a different character, you just change one feature on him. If I changed his nose to something different, it would change the look of the character. If I brought the nose into more of a ski slope, then it starts to look more like Richard Nixon to a certain extent there. If I really wanted to exaggerate it, I suppose I could make it a caricature of Richard Nixon. If you look at just that part of it, it starts to look like him. So just by altering little features on the character's face can change the character quite dramatically. But basically you've got millions and millions of different options that you can play around with to create a different type of a character.